Flight attendant insults Asian woman, unaware she's FBI special agent on mission. Welcome everyone to a high-flying drama that begins innocently in the bustling corridors of an international airport, but soon escalates into a breathtaking tale of arrogance, betrayal, and hidden identities. Prepare to be immersed in a story where a seemingly ordinary passenger is anything but, where a rude flight attendant's casual prejudice ignites a chain of unexpected events at 30,000 feet. In this suspense-packed account, an Asian woman on a clandestine mission faces off against more dangers than she'd ever anticipated. Fasten your seatbelts and get ready to experience a gripping journey that spans continents and secrets, proving that appearances can be deceiving. Before we dive in, if you're new here, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss an update. If you're excited about this story, let us know. If you enjoyed the video, press 1. If not, press O. Your feedback really inspires me to gather more uplifting and meaningful stories. It all started on a crisp spring morning at John F. Kennedy International Airport in New York City. The tarmac glowed with the rising sun, and busy ground crew members darted between the planes like ants in a colony. Inside Terminal 44's spacious lounge, travelers jostled and scurried, some bleary-eyed from lack of sleep, others animated by the excitement of new destinations. No one gave a second glance to the petite Asian woman seated quietly at gate B23, her thick hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. She wore a tailored black blazer and clutched a small piece of hand luggage that bore the unmistakable Toomey brand, a real detail of authenticity and a sign she valued discreet but functional elegance. Passengers came and went around her, some anxious, some placid, but she remained composed. Little did anyone know this unassuming traveler was actually an FBI special agent with a top-secret assignment. Even the gate agent who scanned her boarding pass didn't suspect a thing. Suddenly, a stern announcement crackled over the intercom. This is the final boarding call for transcontinental flight 809 bound for Tokyo Narita. All passengers must board immediately. The crowd began a hurried exodus toward the jet bridge. Despite the flurry, the quiet agent stood up calmly, a slight smile on her face. She had rehearsed this moment mentally, confident she was about to take a significant step toward unraveling a dangerous international criminal enterprise. Before stepping onto the Boeing 787 Dreamliner, she glanced at her phone, noting a coded message from her FBI liaison that read, "Contact will be on the plane. Trust no one." Intrigued and a bit uneasy, she walked on board. As soon as she entered the aircraft cabin, the agent noticed the distinct new plane scent mingling with a faint aroma of strong coffee. A flight attendant stood by the entrance, flashing a polished, professional smile to each boarding passenger. This flight attendant, whose name tag read Clarissa, had an almost regal posture. Clarissa greeted travelers with mechanical courtesy. "Welcome, your seat is just down the aisle, or please store your luggage in the overhead compartments." But when it came to the Asian agent, Clarissa's polite mask slipped. She eyed the woman up and down, frowned slightly, and muttered something under her breath. The FBI agent, more used to ignoring slights than confronting them, merely nodded and offered a polite thank you. She strolled forward, ignoring the quiet storm she sensed brewing behind those cold eyes. As the FBI agent made her way down the aisle, she caught snippets of tense conversations among passengers. One older gentleman murmured about missing an important business meeting in Tokyo. A mother hushed her restless child. Two young tourists giggled nervously, planning to explore Japan for the first time. Yet, overshadowing all of that was Clarissa's piercing stare that felt like a laser beam slicing through the agent's back. The agent tried to dismiss it. She had more urgent matters at hand. She couldn't allow a rude flight attendant to ruin her concentration. With her seat number in mind, she quietly took her place in business class, tucking the To-Me carry-on beneath her feet. Moments after she sat down, the agent felt a subtle disturbance in the cabin. A tall man wearing a wrinkled suit scanned the rows before settling into the seat directly across the aisle from her. She recognized him immediately. He was a known operative in the criminal organization she was investigating. Their eyes met for a split second. He quickly looked away, feigning indifference, but she sensed the tension in his shoulders. Her FBI training kicked in. Keep calm, make no sudden moves, but remain hyper-aware. Surprisingly, Clarissa reappeared, her expression more guarded this time. She asked the Asian agent for her drink order in a clipped tone, as though giving no real choice. "Water is fine," replied the agent in an equally calm voice. The attendant's eyes flickered with disdain. Why was Clarissa so unsettled? The agent couldn't help but wonder if something else was at play. Was the flight attendant simply harboring prejudices? Or had Clarissa sensed that the agent was not who she claimed to be? Outside the plane, ground traffic signals blinked, and a gentle rumble beneath the seats indicated it was nearly time for departure. The atmosphere crackled with a mix of anticipation and concealed tension. With engines soon to roar and their flight path set for nearly 14 hours in the sky, the agent braced herself for what might unfold. She couldn't shake the feeling that the man across the aisle was not the only hidden threat she needed to watch. As the plane pushed back from the gate, the safety video played, but most experienced travelers barely glanced at it. The FBI agent, however, kept her eyes on Clarissa. The flight attendant assisted an elderly couple struggling with their seatbelts, but did so with barely veiled impatience. Clarissa then scanned the aisle for any other passenger needing help, her stern gaze pausing momentarily on the agent, as if to say, "I'm watching you." The woman across the aisle from the agent, a well-dressed influencer type, also seemed to pick up on Clarissa's condescension, but decided to look away, not wanting any trouble. Suddenly, the captain's voice filled the cabin. "Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is Captain Miller speaking. We're expecting a smooth ride en route to Tokyo Narita. Flight time will be around 13 hours and 50 minutes. Please make yourselves comfortable." Almost immediately, the agent felt a jerk as the plane began taxiing along the runway. A wave of excitement rippled through many passengers. Some loved the thrill of takeoff. Others pressed their faces against the window for a final glimpse of the Big Apple. Yet the FBI agent felt no such excitement. She was laser-focused on her mission. There was a crucial piece of intel to be delivered mid-flight, and if she failed to intercept it, the entire operation could fall apart. The scowl Clarissa wore was the least of her concerns, but that scowl held an unsettling intensity that refused to be ignored. Minutes later, the plane roared down the runway and soared into the clear blue sky. The agent's stomach dipped during the ascent, but she maintained her composed facade. Once the seatbelt sign switched off, Clarissa and two other flight attendants began their in-flight service routine. They rolled the service cart down the aisle, offering drinks and snacks. When Clarissa reached the agent's row, her stony expression hardened. The agent noticed Clarissa's lip curl as she set a cup of water down without a word. Then, in a passive-aggressive tone that dripped with displeasure, Clarissa asked, "Are you sure you wouldn't prefer tea instead?" It was a small comment, but the insinuation was clear. The agent met Clarissa's glare calmly, responding, "I'm fine with water, thank you." The tension in the air was palpable. Several passengers nearby began to exchange puzzled glances. Why was Clarissa targeting this woman? The agent took the high road, knowing that blowing her cover for a petty confrontation would jeopardize the mission. Yet she couldn't ignore the stress. She reminded herself that in just a few hours she was supposed to receive vital information from another passenger. That passenger was rumored to be in seat 27C, in economy. She had no idea who they were or what they looked like. All she knew was that they carried a small black notebook containing the names of major players in an upcoming arms deal. Meanwhile, the imposing man in the wrinkled suit across the aisle was likely eyeing her every move. Midway through the flight, the agent decided to stretch her legs. She rose from her seat and made her way toward the rear of the plane, passing rows of sleeping or quietly reading passengers. The hum of the engines created a soothing background noise, but her mind churned with the urgency of her covert objective. She had to find a way to reach seat 27C without drawing attention, especially from Clarissa, who hovered nearby, as if waiting for an excuse to lash out again. While passing the galley, the agent saw Clarissa pacing impatiently. The flight attendant's uniform was immaculate, but her behavior was anything but professional. A younger flight attendant tried to speak with Clarissa, but was quickly shooed away. The agent overheard snippets of a conversation. Clarissa mentioned something about disrespect and people with no manners, as if she were fuming over an unresolved grudge. The agent sensed that Clarissa's target was none other than herself, but she couldn't fathom why the hostility felt so personal. In that moment, the agent considered the possibility that Clarissa might be more than just a rude attendant. Could she be working with the criminal network the FBI was investigating? The notion seemed far-fetched, but stranger alliances had occurred in her line of work. Stepping gingerly toward the economy cabin, the agent spotted a tall man with dark hair wearing a flight attendant's uniform, leaning over seat 27C. The occupant was hidden from view by the high seat back, but the agent watched closely. She glimpsed a discreet exchange, a folded napkin being slipped between them. Was this the contact or just a friendly gesture of giving extra peanuts? Her pulse quickened, and she decided to move in. However, Clarissa's voice rang out like a whip. "You're not allowed back here, ma'am. First-class passengers should remain in their section unless using the restroom." Heads turned, curious eyes falling on the agent, who tried to keep her cool. She offered a polite smile. "I'm just stretching my legs," she said softly. "I wasn't aware there were restrictions." Clarissa stepped closer. "Well, now you know. If you need something, we can bring it to you. It's our job." The words were polite, but the tone was anything but. Something about Clarissa's unwavering stare made the agent's skin crawl. Her mind raced with possibilities. Was Clarissa prejudiced, or she actively guarding seat 27C? On the surface, it looked like hostility born of ignorance, but the agent had learned never to take things at face value. She needed a plan to get past Clarissa fast. Returning to her seat, the agent pretended to read a magazine while discreetly scanning the cabin for potential allies. The well-dressed influencer type from earlier appeared to be glancing in the agent's direction with a look of curiosity. A middle-aged couple across the aisle, perhaps noticing the uneasy exchange, whispered to each other with sympathetic expressions. And of course, the man with the wrinkled suit was still there, scrolling through his phone with a tense jawline. An unexpected jolt of turbulence shook the cabin, prompting several passengers to grab their armrests. The seatbelt sign dinged on, and Clarissa made an abrupt announcement. "Please remain seated and fasten your seatbelts. We're experiencing slight turbulence." The agent, too, buckled up, but her mind was on seat 27C. She realized she needed to find a way to get that black notebook. The next few hours would be crucial. With the seatbelt sign still on, Clarissa found an excuse to walk through the aisle, checking seatbelts, but also, it seemed, focusing her critical gaze on the agent. A thought struck the agent. Perhaps Clarissa wasn't the real threat at all. Could she be a red herring, a bigoted individual whose hostility was overshadowing more dire secrets? Or maybe Clarissa truly was connected to the criminal syndicate. In her years of FBI training, the agent had never encountered such a confounding scenario. She decided her only chance was to confront the tension directly once the turbulence cleared. After about 20 minutes, the ride smoothed out and the seatbelt sign turned off. Passengers visibly relaxed, returning to their naps, movies, or in-flight meals. Summoning her courage, the agent pressed the call button. She needed to speak to someone other than Clarissa, maybe another flight attendant who could offer a chance for the agent to slip into economy. But fate had other plans. Clarissa arrived at her seat in seconds, wearing a tight-lipped smile that felt more like a challenge. "Is there something you need?" she asked, her tone biting. "Yes," the agent replied, trying her best to appear polite. "I'm not feeling well. I was wondering if you have any ginger ale or something to settle my stomach." Clarissa tilted her head, her sarcasm evident. "Not used to flying long haul?" she asked. Then, with a forced sigh, she added, "I'll get you some ginger ale. Wait here, please." That last phrase, "wait here, please," rang in the agent's ears like an order to a child. Normally she would brush off such condescension, but her instincts shouted that something was off. The agent considered following Clarissa into the galley to see what might happen there. But her moment of hesitation was interrupted by the man in the wrinkled suit, who suddenly stood up and approached the agent. He leaned in, voice low, breath smelling of stale coffee. "I know who you are," he whispered. "And if I know, someone else on this plane might know too." A chill coursed through the agent's spine. She locked eyes with the man. "I think you're mistaken," she replied, forcing composure. He gave a short, bitter laugh. "Sure, mistaken. We have a lot to talk about, don't we?" Before she could respond, Clarissa returned, ginger ale in hand, eyes darting between them. "Sir, please return to your seat. We ask passengers not to crowd the aisles," she said. Her voice was less scornful than usual, which surprised the agent. The man complied, but not before whispering, "We'll talk later." Now thoroughly rattled, the agent accepted the ginger ale from Clarissa. The flight attendant looked her straight in the eye. "Anything else?" Clarissa asked, in a tone that suggested she'd like nothing more than a confrontation. The agent shook her head, feigning a faint smile. A moment later, Clarissa pivoted on her heel and headed to the next row. Sipping the soda to soothe her nerves, the agent realized that time was running out. The man in the wrinkled suit might blow her cover. There could be more operatives on board, maybe even Clarissa. She needed to reach seat 27C and secure that black notebook. But how? With Clarissa breathing down her neck and the suspicious man ready to corner her. The pieces of the puzzle were shifting unpredictably, and the plane was still hours from landing. An unexpected announcement crackled overhead. "Ladies and gentlemen, if there is a medical professional on board, please press the call button. We have a passenger needing assistance in row 22. The agent's heartbeat quickened. This might be the perfect distraction. Sure enough, she saw a flurry of movement as two flight attendants dashed toward row 22. Passengers craned their necks, some standing to get a better look. In that moment of commotion, the agent seized the opportunity. She stood and quietly made her way toward the rear, capitalizing on the chaos. To her relief, Clarissa was nowhere in sight, likely helping with the medical emergency. The agent slipped through the aisle, scanning the seat numbers until she reached 27C. The occupant was a slight, nervous-looking woman holding a small black journal in her lap. The agent leaned down, speaking quietly. "We need to talk," she said. The woman startled, eyes widening. "Who are you?" she whispered, hugging the notebook protectively. "I'm your contact," the agent replied, flashing a fleeting glimpse of her FBI credential hidden in her blazer. "I need that. Lives depend on it." Before the woman could respond, the entire plane jolted violently worse than before. The lights flickered, and an oxygen mask compartment overhead rattled ominously. A collective gasp erupted from the passengers, followed by panicked murmurs. A disembodied voice from the cockpit boomed, "Cabin crew, take seats immediately!" Severe turbulence ahead. The agent grabbed the seat back to steady herself, her eyes never leaving the black notebook. A thunderous roar enveloped the aircraft, and for a moment, the world seemed to spin. In the pandemonium of sudden turbulence, oxygen masks dangled overhead, and the aisle became a chaos of shifting baggage, clattering service carts, and frightened cries. The agent's heart pounded as she clung to the seat. She had no choice but to crouch down in 27C and yank an oxygen mask over her face. The contact, trembling, did the same. For seconds that felt like hours, the plane lurched, diving and rising, battered by violent air currents. The captain's strained voice came through again. "Everyone, remain calm. We're doing everything we can to stabilize the aircraft. Please stay in your seats." In that surreal moment, the agent locked eyes with the trembling woman. They both knew that neither would let go of that black notebook. The agent gently eased it from the woman's grasp, giving a nod of reassurance. Then, like a curtain lifted, the turbulence subsided to a gentler rumble. The plane stabilized, though the tension among the passengers did not. Some broke into relieved sobs, others muttered prayers, and a few simply stared numbly into space. Trying to regain her composure, the agent slid the notebook into an inside pocket of her blazer. "I'll take this, for everyone's safety," she whispered. The contact nodded shakily, tears threatening to spill, but she seemed relieved to pass on the responsibility. Clutching the seat for support, the agent turned to head back to her row. That's when she spotted Clarissa standing 2 rows ahead, arms folded, her face twisted in a scowl that seemed directed straight at the agent. The flight attendant's eyes flicked toward the agent's jacket pocket, as though she'd just witnessed the entire exchange. Even as the rest of the cabin was flooded with relief after surviving that terrifying patch of turbulence, Clarissa's demeanor was anything but comforting. She stormed toward the agent, fury blazing. "What do you think you're doing in the economy cabin? And what," she pointed at the agent's pocket, her voice quavering with rage, "do you have there?" The agent was in no mood to be bullied, especially now that crucial evidence nestled in her blazer. She raised a placating hand. "It's just personal property. There's no need to cause a scene." Clarissa snorted. "Cause a scene? You're not supposed to be meddling with other passengers. You need to return to your seat immediately." The agent noticed that Clarissa's outburst had caught the attention of the man in the wrinkled suit, who was now standing at the back of the aisle. A sense of dread clutched her chest. She was caught between Clarissa's wrath and the suspicious man's watchful eyes. Yet, in an unforeseen twist, the influencer from business class approached, stepping in front of the agent like a shield. "Is there a problem?" she asked, voice calm but firm, challenging Clarissa's hostility. At that same moment, the younger flight attendant who had tried to talk to Clarissa earlier arrived, panting slightly as if she'd rushed from the front cabin. Her eyes darted from Clarissa's snarling face to the frightened expression of the agent. Sensing the tension, the younger attendant tried to diffuse it. "Clarissa, maybe we should..." But Clarissa cut her off, practically yelling, "I don't need your help. Stand aside." This was the moment that changed everything. The agent decided enough was enough. She needed to assert her authority before events spiraled out of control and compromised her mission further. In one swift motion, the agent retrieved her badge from her pocket, flipping it open so that both the influencer and the younger flight attendant could see. "I'm a federal agent," she said softly, but with resolve. The influencer's eyes widened in shock, while the younger attendant gasped. Clarissa recoiled as if she'd just touched a live wire. "That's impossible," she hissed. The agent, ignoring Clarissa, addressed the younger flight attendant. I'm requesting the cooperation of all crew members to ensure the safety of this flight and everyone on board." Clarissa's expression twisted in disbelief and fear. She demanded, "How dare you impersonate?" But the agent cut her off. "I have no reason to lie." She turned her badge so Clarissa could see the official seal more clearly. In that instant, the man in the wrinkled suit edged closer. The agent could sense him looming behind her, poised like a snake ready to strike. There was no turning back now. The agent had to think fast, or she'd be trapped between two hostile forces. Before Clarissa could protest further, the younger flight attendant stepped in, gently urging, "Clarissa, let's step aside and let her pass." Surprising everyone, the influencer confronted Clarissa, saying, "I saw how you've been treating this passenger since before takeoff. I think you owe her an apology." Though the influencer's voice was calm, it carried the weight of someone who wasn't afraid to speak up. Passengers nearby watched the tense standoff, some filming with their phones, others quietly rooting for the agent, though they had no idea she was FBI. A hush descended as they waited to see what would happen next. Clarissa's cheeks burned red with a mix of anger and embarrassment. For a split second, it seemed she might lash out. Instead, she spat. "I only do my job. I don't apologize to stowaways in the wrong cabin." With that, she whirled around and stormed off toward the front galley, ignoring the agent's flashing badge. A flurry of confused murmurs rippled through the watching passengers. The influencer gave the agent a sidelong look that communicated both relief and solidarity. "Take care," she whispered. Then she returned to her seat. The agent knew she'd crossed a line by revealing her identity so publicly, but circumstances had forced her hand. With the black notebook tucked away, she hurried back to business class. The man in the wrinkled suit was nowhere to be seen, sending a fresh wave of unease through her mind. Was he lurking in the galley, the lavatory, or had he retaken his seat, waiting for the next opportunity to pounce? Once in her seat, the agent carefully examined the black notebook. Page after page contained cryptic names, dates, and references to shipments. A sense of triumph welled up. This was exactly the intel needed to dismantle a massive criminal enterprise. But the tension remained. Would she make it to Tokyo without further incident? Clarissa's hostility had reached a new level, and the agent had no idea how far the flight attendant would go to sabotage her. The agent had to remain vigilant, especially with the looming presence of the man in the wrinkled suit. She couldn't let her guard down, not even for a second. Hours dragged on, and the cabin lights dimmed for the overnight portion of the flight. Most passengers tried to catch some sleep, aided by the hush of the engines and the gentle flicker of personal TV screens. The agent rested her head against the seat, feigning sleep, but her senses were on high alert. Her mind replayed every detail of the day: Clarissa's hostility, the contact's trembling hands, the turbulence, and the man's unsettling whisper. She wondered if the note from the FBI liaison contact will be on the plane. Trust no one had been a dire warning about Clarissa. At around 3 in the morning, airplane time, a soft click broke the silence. The agent slowly opened her eyes. Clarissa stood at the edge of the aisle, peering down at her with a menacing glare. The flight attendant leaned in, whispering, "I don't care who you say you are. People like you always sneaking around, pretending to be better than everyone else. Don't think I haven't noticed." Her words were laced with contempt, implying more than mere prejudice. Then Clarissa delivered a chilling ultimatum: stay in your seat and keep your secrets to yourself. If you don't, I'll make sure the authorities are waiting for you when we land. The agent's heartbeat thundered in her ears. She had to keep calm. That's a serious threat, she whispered back. But Clarissa simply smirked. She walked away, disappearing down the aisle. In that moment, the agent realized something critical. Clarissa might have connections to law enforcement on the other side of this flight, possibly bribed or manipulated by the crime syndicate. Or maybe it was just a hollow threat. Either way, the agent couldn't risk letting Clarissa sabotage her mission. As dawn broke outside the aircraft windows, the cabin lights slowly brightened. Some passengers stirred awake, yawning and stretching. The agent remained watchful, observing Clarissa's interactions. The flight attendant seemed to oscillate between forced politeness with other travelers and venomous glares directed at the agent. Meanwhile, the man in the wrinkled suit still lurked in business class, reading a newspaper as if he didn't have a care in the world. But the agent knew better. His every page turn might be a covert glance in her direction. Finally, the plane began its descent toward Tokyo Narita Airport. The captain's voice carried a hint of relief. "We'll be landing shortly. Flight attendants, please prepare the cabin." The agent felt tension coil in her stomach. The notebook was safely hidden. But what about Clarissa's threat? As the seatbelt sign dinged on, Clarissa performed a final cabin check with an air of arrogance, ignoring or snapping at anyone who asked a question. When she reached the agent, she paused, voice dripping with false civility. "We'll be on the ground soon. I hope you enjoyed your flight." A cat-like smile curved her lips, making the agent's skin crawl. Elsewhere, the younger flight attendant emerged, handing out immigration forms. She paused at the agent's row and softly apologized on behalf of the crew. "I saw how Clarissa treated you," she said under her breath. "I'm sorry. She's been reprimanded before, but never listens. I'm not sure what her issue is." The agent nodded appreciatively, though she suspected that Clarissa's issues went far beyond a bad attitude. She suspected a deeper web of corruption that might reach ground agents in Tokyo. Nonetheless, she couldn't abandon the mission. She had to see this through. The wheels touched down with a resounding thud, accompanied by the screech of rubber on asphalt. A ripple of relief and mild applause coursed through the cabin despite the drama. They'd made it safely across the Pacific. Taxiing past the rows of aircraft at Narita, the Boeing 787 Dreamliner finally came to a gentle stop at the gate. The seatbelt sign blinked off. The agent grabbed her to-me bag, heart pounding, aware that the next few minutes could make or break her mission. Clarissa opened the aircraft door, wearing a practiced smile for the ground staff, but quickly reverting to her grimace as she turned back to the passengers deplaning. The agent waited until the aisle cleared somewhat. She needed to avoid Clarissa at all costs. Yet, as she moved toward the door, Clarissa stepped into her path, forcing a confrontation. "You're lucky you made it through the flight," Clarissa said, her voice a venomous hush. "But don't think for a second you can just waltz out of here. People like you, agents, or not always get what's coming to them." The agent glared back, then calmly replied, "I'm counting on it." She stepped around Clarissa and began walking toward the jet bridge. But Clarissa wasn't finished. She lunged forward and attempted to snatch the agent's blazer pocket, presumably going for the notebook. The agent instinctively twisted away, bumping into the man in the wrinkled suit who had appeared out of nowhere. A collective gasp erupted from the line of passengers behind them, unsure if they were witnessing an assault or some bizarre confrontation between ex-lovers. Before the agent could catch her breath, the man in the wrinkled suit seized her arm, muttering, "Time's up." An instant surge of adrenaline shot through the agent's veins. She shook off his grasp with a swift FBI taut maneuver, causing the man to stagger. Clarissa, seeing her chance, tried again to grab the agent's blazer, but the agent ducked beneath her outstretched arm. The corridor leading to the jet bridge momentarily transformed into a chaotic dance of aggression and self-defense. Several onlookers froze, unsure whether to intervene or stand back. Then, in an unexpected twist, the younger flight attendant and the influencer from earlier rushed forward to help the agent. The influencer blocked Clarissa's path, while the younger attendant positioned herself between the agent and the man in the wrinkled suit. "Stop it! Everyone calm down," she cried. Security personnel rushed into the jet bridge, alerted by the commotion. They demanded to know what was happening. In the swirl of confusion, the agent saw her window. She flashed her FBI badge at the security team, shouting, "Federal agent! That man is a suspect in an ongoing investigation." The man in the wrinkled suit paled, then tried to make a break for it, pushing past startled passengers. But the agent, adrenaline surging, tackled him from behind, her years of training culminating in one fluid takedown. Clarissa yelped in shock, her face a mask of outrage and fear. The younger flight attendant and the influencer kept her at bay, preventing her from interfering. When the dust settled, airport security had restrained the man in the wrinkled suit, and the agent presented her credentials to an arriving officer from the Tokyo Metropolitan Police. Breathless but triumphant, she explained that she was part of an international task force collaborating with Japanese authorities. "He's been coordinating arms deals," she stated, tapping the pocket containing the black notebook. "We have evidence." The Japanese officer nodded, escorting the man away for immediate questioning. Clarissa stood off to the side, red-faced and trembling. She tried to defend herself, claiming the agent was causing chaos and fabricating lies. But the influencer stepped forward, recounting how Clarissa had been taunting and insulting the agent since boarding. The younger flight attendant corroborated, revealing Clarissa's long history of complaints and official warnings from Transcontinental. One of the security officials asked the agent if she wanted to press charges for assault, given Clarissa's attempt to forcibly seize her property. A hush fell over the onlookers. All eyes turned to the agent. She considered for a moment, then replied, "I'll leave that to the airline and local authorities. My priority is to finalize the mission." She sent Clarissa a pointed look. "But I do hope justice is served." The agent recognized that pressing charges personally might delay or obstruct the far larger case. Clarissa, realizing the gravity of her predicament, wilted under the scrutiny of the uniformed officials. For once, her arrogance evaporated. Shortly afterward, the passengers were allowed to proceed into the terminal. The agent, still trembling from the confrontation, paused to catch her breath. The influencer gently touched her arm, offering a grateful smile. "Thank you for handling that," she said. "You might have saved us all from something far worse." The agent nodded, carefully gauging her surroundings. Tokyo Narita bustled with travelers from all over the world, a maze of bright signs and multilingual announcements. She spotted the designated liaison from the FBI's regional office standing near a coffee shop, looking relieved to see her. Before stepping away, the agent turned back to see Clarissa being escorted down the corridor by airport security, face ashen. She was heading toward the airline administration offices, presumably for an immediate investigation. The karmic retribution had arrived swiftly and decisively. Clarissa's bias and hostility had not only been exposed, but had effectively ruined any attempt at covering up her actions. Whether she had been working for the syndicate or was just a bitter individual with a vendetta, her reign of airborne tyranny was at an end. The younger flight attendant waved shyly, as if to say goodbye, while a handful of passengers who had witnessed the scuffle offered nods of appreciation. The agent acknowledged them with a polite nod, grateful for their unexpected support. She then walked confidently toward her liaison, knowing that her mission was not only successful, but had also brought about a measure of justice. Even in the high-altitude crucible of prejudice and peril, truth had prevailed. Thank you so much for joining us on this pulse-pounding journey of conflict, danger, and retribution at 30,000 feet. We hope you were as riveted by the unexpected plot twists, hidden agendas, and heroic acts of courage as we were. If you found yourself at the edge of your seat, whether cheering on the FBI agent, outraged at Clarissa's cruel behavior or fascinated by the clandestine mission, then please show your support. Like this video to let us know you want more stories like this. Share it with friends who love a good thriller.